Diagram from templates. I don't know if we have some kind of demonstration about that, but diagram is... I'm not sure everybody has seen what is capable Tiki diagram, but it's pretty impressive. I will set up a demo, but everyone is welcome to visit that page. Yeah, okay. Unless someone has a kind of demo working.
Oh, I don't have a demo offhand, but there's a lot of screenshots on that page. I think people will really get it.
Yeah.
I can explain what the new feature is, though. So what's coming in Tiki 23 is the capability to basically fork a diagram, or actually a wiki page. There's a second part. So the main use case that brought this, just to illustrate it, is for the public tender process. We prepare proposals for projects. And a lot of the content from one proposal to the next may be exactly the same. So in which case we use plugin include to include wiki pages. But in some cases, the diagram will be a bit different. If we're going to do a Gantt chart, we're going to change the dates. If we're using we're presenting the architecture we would present for a specific project, maybe some things will change slightly. So what's been added for Tiki 23, I think it's George that wrote that feature, is basically to say, oh, this is when you're going to see a diagram, you're going to have like a new button that says, do you want to make a copy of this? Or from this wiki page, if plugin include is used and you're including a wiki page, you can include it directly, but you can also make a copy. So it's basically what we would do manually, right? You could do it manually and just copy paste, but this makes it, a smoother process. So it's an incremental improvement on the fantastic diagrams feature. Any questions on that?
I want to just add that it's really a nice thing if you're in a situation where you need to do duplicates or slight variations of diagrams, because in Evoludata's business now with submitting public tender proposals, there's a possibility of putting a diagram in that has the previous client's information and name, which is pretty embarrassing and probably would not result in a successful bid. So this makes it easier to make sure that your diagrams are current with the document that you're submitting. So in this kind of use case, it's a real nice little feature to have.
Thank you. I would really like to say that I really love this this diagram thing, and I'm ashamed I couldn't. It's 1 year now that I didn't post any tutorial, but one of the tutorial I wanted to do is about diagram, because such kind of things can help everyone. I mean, really everyone. If we could bring that into Tiki as you did, but bring that into organization, for development, for class, for people, for anyone. Diagram is something very important, and with the emerging way of using mobile, I'm sure we can have some kind of mix of several different technology. Now it seems a bit futuristic, but in 1 or 2 years, that will be with augmented reality, such kind of things can be used in a very interesting way. That in my opinion, that's really a great feature. Thank you for bringing this. We have also hybrid authentication integration. Now, Johnny and Aris are there, so if I say something wrong, feel free to correct me. Aris, by the way, we discussed the idea that you could demonstrate to the people of the that are coming to the TikiFest some kind of what you started with us during the last Tiki round table meeting. So I hope that will be okay with you. We can discuss that a little later. And from my understanding, you've created a branch and now it needs to be integrated into Tiki 23. That's correct, Johnny, Aris?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I need Johnny's help for the last bits.
Great, perfect. So just to remind maybe people joining or see only that video, hybrid authentication integration will allow any user having a login from Google, Facebook. There is dozens of different social network and external application options to log in into Tiki and to have the user manage it directly within Tiki. Machine learning. See machine learning, so I will do that.
I can I can take.
Thank you.
Super. So this is thank you for showing that page. So this is a good topic, which is not simple, and this is basically going to change the face of Tiki in the coming years. And this is version 1. So basically, to explain this, before I'm telling you what we're going to do in Tiki, what we have done in Tiki, basically, what is machine learning? Machine learning, and it's a branch of artificial intelligence. So of course, there's a lot of buzz about AI and art. But I think I like to be very careful about using the right terms. So we're specifically doing machine learning, which is a branch of AI. Now, why that's different is that traditional programming and everything in Tiki today, pretty much, is basically an intention. It's basically if then else, right? It's very simple. It can be very advanced. There can be many things, but fundamentally, it's us, the developer team, telling Tiki what to do with data. We have to have the intention, and we do a lot of fantastic things with that. Machine learning is basically the programming is done by the data, right? It learns from the data. So a very simple example of that would be a spam filter. So imagine you have a spam filter, and then you have to have a dictionary of all the nasty words, of everything you want to block. It's doable, but you're always fighting, adding new words and new things. Whereas if it's machine learning, you can learn from the data. So there's some details, supervised, unsupervised, but at a high level, basically, you tell the user, can you tell me, don't explain why, but just give me 2 buckets, spam and not spam. And then the humans will make classify the data. And after that, the machine is going to build rules from that and then run them. So what it's really good for is, things like that, classification, anomaly detection, things that you use the data to decide what happens. And now this is new in Tiki, and it's a library called Rubix ML that has been a PHP library that's been around for a few years, and it has quite a growing community. Now, if I just look in our chat room right now, we're near almost 200 people in the chat room. And my hope is that the majority of PHP projects will converge to use Rubix ML. And Rubix ML, why I like it? Well, because it brings features to Tiki, but as well, it has a sort of an all-in-one philosophy, and it currently manages over 40 algorithms. So it's a toolbox with a bunch of things in it, which is really good because this is the type of thing you don't know in advance what you're going to need. So let me give you a real use case that we're working on. Anomaly detection. So we have system logs in Tiki. Okay, so system logs, we know who logged in, when, how much, where, perhaps their IP address, what, and then what they did they edit wiki pages? So we have, in many cases, years of data. I think I have one Tiki, I think I have 10 million lines in the system log. Okay, great. But then let's say you want to detect if some account was hacked. Well, how would you notice that? Well, you would have a behavior which would be different. The hacked account, once it's hacked, the logins would not happen at the same time as usual. The frequency, the actions, things would change because you have a user that has a specific pattern, and then the patterns are different. Well, machine learning lets us do that, and that's one of the feature requests that we got, is detect anomalies from user logins and user actions. Well, once we do that, we're going to do it for user actions, but then we could use it all over Tiki. So imagine for wiki pages, we get a spam attack. It's not as common nowadays because we have some other protections against spam, but a while back, at one point, out of the blue, somebody would create 30 wiki pages. And that's a very unusual behavior, and that would have been flagged by machine learning. Another example of machine learning is classification. So for example, let's say you have, like in our case on tiki.org, we have thousands of wiki pages. And let's say you want to categorize them. Well, it would take a lot of time for a team of humans to do that. But you could tell them, well, go and categorize 5% of the pages, and then the system is going to try to do the rest. And it can do it at a fairly high level of reliability, and especially it's good if it's better than nothing. Of course, if you have unlimited resources of smart people that can do it, then okay. But often that's not the case. You have more data than people. So that's where we're going in machine learning. So two of the people in the community, the machine learning of this project, Rubix ML. So there's Enrique in Brazil and Andrew in the US. So they're working on this project, and we've integrated, and we've hit it off, and now they're going to be working with us in Tiki. And so Enrique has already started. He's done some commits on the webmail, and Andrew is coming soon. And basically what that means is they're going to be helping us all over Tiki. And one of the immediate sort of low-hanging fruit use cases will be the email handling, because emails is the type of thing that you have a lot of data and there's a lot of operations. So we're going to do machine learning on email. So what would that look like? Well, of course, tagging spam versus not spam, but also moving the email to the right folder. It could also be preparing, automatic replies. So anytime that you're doing repetitive things, machine learning is something to look at. Any questions?
Very interesting. Does that work only with textual data, or this can do, for example, picture classification? Those going to gallery, those going to paysage gallery, those going to building gallery?
Very good question. So here, machine learning in itself, it can do also images and videos and all kinds of things because it's just data fundamentally. Then the question becomes a question of performance. It could do it could do certain things, for example, but maybe it would take too much time. Like maybe it could take like 2 weeks to train the model, and then that would be too long for what you need. So we're working with Andrew basically on certain use cases that today the performance is not good enough to be realistic, but that's going to improve over time. And as we work on use cases, we're going to hit, like in the rest of Tiki, right? I remember the first time I had a Tiki with, I think it was over 1 million like wiki pages that we had to import. Well, the poor thing, when we imported 1 million wiki pages in Tiki, the poor thing died. Well, Sylvie worked on it for an hour or two, and then it was working again. It was crazy because the list of pages was very, very long, and it was not easy to use, but at least it wasn't completely broken. So as we hit use cases, we're going to progressively work on performance. One of the things that's going to come, which Fabio actually has been talking about for a while, that he wants to add to Tiki, is the concept of workers, of background tasks. So probably that's something that that's gonna push to the top of the list, to say, well, because the machine learning, to build the model, that's what's very slow, and that takes time. It could take a day, it could take a week, but running the model doesn't necessarily take that much time. So realistically, let's say we have a data set. We tell the machine, okay, run the model, build the model. That takes a week. But if that model is stable enough, then it could take a few seconds every time you use it. That's not the problem. But we're going to probably want some sort of background process that would sort of run that in the background, and maybe split the load on several machines, things like that.
So I have a question.
That we're at step one of this. It's sort of a long journey that over the next few years, what I see basically in 5 years, in 10 years, is that there's two ways to program stuff in Tiki. Either sort of the traditional way, or there's machine learning, and case by case, we're gonna use the different things in the toolbox. So there was a question.
Yes, about Rubix ML in terms of its dependencies and its size of the library. Is it something that would be separately installed, or is it not so big that it's just going to be included in Tiki? And related to that, would you install it on a separate box, a separate virtual machine, or separate whatever, so that it doesn't crash your main machine if it takes too much power doing something?
Very good question. Thank you, Nelson. And by the way, thank you for being here. And I'm very happy that you're here with your team. And we'll talk about the APIs because I have some stuff on the roadmap there that we should look at all together. So to your question, for now, yes, it's built in. It doesn't take a lot of code. It's not a big library, so it's all built in. The license is fine. And to me, I wanted it to be built in, right? And that's sort of a differentiator, is that in other projects, the way that they see it, like everything's a module, like everything's external, right? And so, for example, in the Nextcloud project, they use it for the emails. In the emails, one of the email plugins, well, it uses this. And somebody was asking them, could the Rubix be built in? And the person said no, because this is the technology we're using for the email thing, but maybe another plugin will use something else. Well, of course, coming from Tiki, I disagree with that. I want machine learning to be built in. It's something that we don't change. It's something like Smarty and jQuery that everything uses. It's a base that can be used all over. So it's absolutely built in, and we're committed to work with the Rubix team and improving that. And it's not a lot of code, right? So where it takes more is for the test data, and there's some templates, but of course we don't include those. And then to your second question, should we put this on a separate server? Yes, though we didn't get to that yet because we haven't hit those performance problems yet because it's all very new. But actually in Rubix there are two components. There's Rubix, and then there's the server part. So that would definitely be something to look at, how to separate them when it would make sense. And the other thing, though, that's a bit that we'll have to figure out is there could be some overlap, because in Rubix, for example, in the Rubix use case, it's very much data scientists that work with that. So there's going to be a bunch of tools for importing data, exporting data, cleaning the data. That's sort of normal for that type of tool. But some of those things we already do with, Tiki Tracker Tabular. So maybe in some cases we're going to want to improve Rubik's features for certain things, and then get them back through the library for our use. But the great thing is that we have two of the main collaborators on the project, working with us. So we'll figure that out with them. So for now, I think anytime you have any use cases, just ask, and then we can see. Andrew specifically has been very good. Like you go up to him and you say, could machine learning be good for this? And then you explain the use case, and right away he'll tell you, where it is, or where it is on today, and where it is on the roadmap.
Thanks, awesome.
Thanks. Thank you. One sense of use case in my head. Mentions, user mentions, extended from wiki pages. Yeah. Okay, so basically, when you had the add character and you add a username, for example, I will post in the chat at bspheres, Tiki should be able to automatically detect my user account and know that it is me, and link or use, I guess, everything that was once related to the user link that we were displaying in so many cases. That's my basic.
Do I do a little demo of that? Because I've just got next. Well, you could do it if you go to.
Yeah, I can do.
Yeah, if you go to next doc.
Oh, here I can do. Oh no, I have only admin here. That's right. So next. See my screen? You see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm here at next. I need to log in. Work. So I edit the page.
Well, if you go to the Tiki 23 page or any other one, and go to comments. So Mark got, I forget who actually did it, but got user mentions added to wiki pages. So I just moved it into another library so we could use it everywhere. Because then we can demo the other one as well. You post new comment. So yeah, give it a go.
Oh, it's me.
And you'll notice the preview tab, unless
Yeah.
you click OK before you try it.
Yeah.
So now lots of things have previews that didn't have before as well.
Yeah, I can also search the. Oh, that's nice. Because yeah, there are people I'm trying to find all the time, like Fabio, that was
Yeah.
Montesquieu, or but I remember when I'm looking for a specific user, it's not always obvious what is his real name and what is exactly, like in the case of Gary. I have to know that he's Shiba guy.
Yeah.
But then now,
Exactly.
if I put Gary, I know where he is. So that's very nice. Good
If you
addition.
have real names enabled.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if you try the preview tab,
Yeah.
so just above there, you'll get a preview of it. Because I've been using that on GitLab for so long, it just was wrong that we didn't have it.
Yeah,
So I've added that to forums and comments and a few other places so far. more
Nice.
to do.
Nice. So, I will start next. Yes, it will be the same. ODBC, added open database connectivity support to tracker tabular. Is allowed to add ODBC remote source with the right support. What does it mean?
Basically, this was for a client of Mark's that we agreed to try and make a new Tiki for, and it turned out that all the data was being held on a Microsoft SQL server and had to stay there. So luckily, we have Victor on hand, and Victor wrote some magic. So now you can connect a tabular tracker format to an ODBC source, which is most of Microsoft stuff. I think you can get to most types of databases now. You can connect via an ODBC connector, which is unbelievably powerful and means that you can basically synchronize trackers with other external data. So, and he's written parts that automatically export. So when you save a tracker item on Tiki, it then pushes that to the ODBC connected database.
In my opinion, that's the kind of feature that it will be great if we had more clearly what it can do for Microsoft users that you were mentioning, because I know many places where they are kind of stuck with Microsoft infrastructure and they don't have a clue that they can go out of it. Maybe
exactly. Yeah. Well, it's it's very new and isn't finished yet. So once it is, we can add to it. But the basics of it will be there in Tiki 23.
Fantastic. OpenID Connect. When I look at that, I think about the hybrid authentication integration. Is that the same? Something different, or?
Sorry, I think now there was still some questions on the UBC.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Bernard. Yeah, before we get to the next topic, I already wanted to mention that in the mentions which you showed, I think you forgot to mention one of the great things is that it's not just a shortcut in order to include someone's name in a conversation. If you use mentions, I've gotten mail notifications. I mean, yes. They get a mail notification that they have been mentioned here. So that's also a way of involving someone in the conversation. So don't use the arrow-based thing if you don't want them to know about the topic. But if you want to involve them, it's great. And that's one of the main points of the thing. So I wanted to be sure that it was mentioned. So now we can get to the next topic.
Yes, it's important because it can be used and reused and re-reused without knowing this.
I think that's a preference as well, isn't it? Obviously, it's all optional.
I don't know, but I got emails from people who put me in pages as a mentor.
Now, if the mentions are if there's nothing else in mentions, I'd just like to add more stuff on the ODBC and related things. So the aspect of the database, and it plays a bit with the APIs, is we're increasingly hitting use cases where we have one client that has several Tikis, or even if we say our own business, like we have several Tikis, which we use for different use cases. And some of the very cool features like the auto login. Thank you, Nelson. I think you had coded that. But often what we would like is to share a Tiki tracker from one Tiki to the next. So and then we want to maybe share some information in a wiki page on another Tiki. So those use cases are coming again and again. And one of the things a bit related to that is we worked on a proof of concept to integrate this tool here that I put in the chat called Symmetric DS. And the idea of this tool is that if this is basically a way to use many different databases for replication. Now, the way we see this is, let's say that you're using Tiki and to Tiki database, and there's a requirement from the client for some reason that they want a copy of the database in SQL Server or in Postgres or something like that. We know that Tiki can't run on Postgres, on a day-to-day, but this is a script to make backups to that. So basically, it's a way to have the Tiki data available in other databases. And that's we have a proof of concept of that we're going to improve and add to the ecosystem. But it's really, as a big picture, if we talk about APIs, about ODBC, we're really at a point where we have several Tikis and they need to talk to each other, or we have our Tikis that need to talk to some other system. This is increasingly a challenge, and we're starting to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So, OpenID Connect, isn't that related to hybrid authentication?
No, that's separate. Someone did before that hybrid. But actually, I wanted to say that in Tiki hybrid, it will be ID Connect also.
Okay, so I'm not sure, but maybe at some point of the integration, one or the other should be added.
If we test Tiki hybrid and it works, I think it will be not needed, but we'll see.
Okay. Previews, I think that is the thing that you were showing. You tell us to tell me to demonstrate on it. That's correct.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Great.
By the way, I've just added a snapshot of the checkboxes. If you reload that page and go to the hybrid auth thing, I know it's all a bit back to front, but here we are. Yeah, just put a snapshot of the checkboxes that you get.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of half of those. Yeah, so we've kind of duplicated the OpenID thing. I don't know where that came from, but there we go.
About preview, we see that. Real user measurement. JavaScript call it boomerang that measure page load time.
Okay, so let me jump in on that one. So what was the motivation for this feature? So often if we're doing some sort of monitoring or checking the performance or the analytics of a site, typically we could use an external tool. There's Google Analytics that's very popular. There's an open source project called Piwik that had some changes, and then they have forked and became Matomo. But those models are very much always about adding like some lines of JavaScript in your system to get some statistics, to do analytics. But nowadays, because there's more knowledge and awareness about data privacy, like there's a lot of actually some people on the web that Google Analytics is blocked. So if you're relying on Google Analytics to get analytics for your site, you're losing some data because a lot of people are blocking that. So then, we were doing some things with Piwik / Matomo. But the thing is, relying on an external tool, you sort of lose some information, right? And I think it makes sense to use something like Matomo. If you're going to manage 50 websites with 50 different technologies, it's complicated, and all you can do is basically put a JavaScript web bug in each one of them and gather all that information. But in our case, we are running the Tiki instances, so we have access to all the data. So why don't we do the measurements ourselves? So this is one of the sub-projects, basically to say, how could we have our own very advanced, one day very advanced statistics in Tiki And this real user measurement is part of that initiative. Now, why this is useful is that, you know, if someone, it's hard to replicate how the user feels, you know, because you're not sitting where the user is, but perhaps your user is in a place where their internet connection is not so fast, maybe some firewall issues, etc. So maybe the site, like your site created the page in a half a second, and you think your site is fast, but in reality, the end user wasn't very good for them. So there's something in the HTML spec which lets you do that. So what this lets us do is basically have statistics on the real, you know, so that's why I call it real user measurement, and with this library called Boomerang. And then we're going to use that, and where we want to go with that is things like give us reports. What are my 10 slowest pages? What are my 10 fastest pages? You know, and basically then we can work on content and say what's my worst thing in reality, and then we can move on that. In some cases, it will be, oh, I have a big image on this thing, or maybe my my report here is big and I should, you know, not try to put 500 things on the same page, things like that. But today we're a bit blind to those things. So that's why we added that. Any questions? Yeah, and as you said, so Gore/Sasha, well, because it's in Tiki, well, it respects, you know, whatever GDPR that we're respecting. Like, we control the data, so it's not different than any other data that we have already in Tiki. All right, next one: record screen, audio, video. So I'm quite happy with that one. Quite pleased. Back to, you know, before you were talking, Bernard, about diagrams. You know, in the old days, you know, wikis were just text, and that's very that's very limiting. And I forget in which version, but I don't know if it was Tiki 7 or Tiki 12, but a long time ago, we had added a tool to record from the browser, and it was really awesome because, for example, for bug reporting, somebody could report a bug on Tiki, click a button, and it would start a Java applet to record their screen, and they could show us the bug, and that was very efficient. Unfortunately, that was a Java applet, and those things all disappeared, and there was a lot of security problems, and unfortunately, we had to remove it, but there was no alternative. And now we've basically added a modern alternative, an open source project, and you see the link on the page. So it's still new and a little needs some attention still. But the promise of this is basically to say, anywhere in Tiki, the same way you could add some text, you should be able to add audio. You should be able to add a screencast. So where I would like to see this in terms of like a very real use case is comments. Like, we add a lot of tasks, for example, for our team to work on. So we use trackers, but it can be quite long to explain something in text. If you could, so right now what we tend to do, we record an audio message and send that to them. But then that's just, well, one-on-one thing. It's not with the task. So what would be much better is to add a comment, but then say, what do you want your comment? Do you want your comment to be text? Do you want a screencast? Do you want audio? And recording audio comments will be very, very intuitive and fluid for asynchronous work. So that's what this library does. And I think that this is going to change the way we work fundamentally. And it's going to make it much more efficient. Like, for example, if you're reporting a bug, you just record it. You know, today you create a bunch of screenshots, you put arrows, like it's complicated. Now you just record your screencast, boom, one shot. If it's not good, you just cancel and do another screencast. So for documentation, bug reporting, it's going to be very useful.
Bernard, I think you're coming across a composer issue.
Yeah.
That I did. You have to do it in the command line at the moment.
Yeah, I was
the
trying to
web
see if I
package
can.
thing needs updating for Composer 2.
Yeah, sure. I was trying to see if I can install it quickly and so we can demonstrate, but let's move on. Scheduler, any response to allow delay?
I can explain this one as well.
Yep,
So
please.
scheduler, so this is the use case. You have a production site and you have, for example, a next server, so a test upgrade, or maybe a clone. Because in scheduler, we have all these cron jobs that we can add. If you do a clone of a site, you end up with the cron jobs exactly at the same time. So the problem is may have one production site which you copy twice, for a test upgrade, for a clone. So then you'll end up with three Tikis that are trying to do a full rebuild at the same time. So this is just a little preference to say, start mine 30 minutes later, or start mine 2 hours later, so that you don't have all your cron jobs running at the same time.
Okay, and where this is located?
Oh, it's designed to be used is in the system configuration. You put it at the text file where the same place you would say, on my clone site, I'm not using the same Elasticsearch cluster, for example.
Okay, I understand. Sitemap replaced by C. Okay.
So this is a simple one. So basically, for the sitemap, the library we were using was working well, but unfortunately, it was deprecated by a gentleman called Everett Pott that lives in Toronto that I've met, and he had made this library. We were using it, but now because it was deprecated, we wanted another library. So I did some research and I found this one, and we added it, and it actually has some more features that we haven't necessarily implemented yet. But for now, it should be the same feature set as before. Basically, when you run it, it generates a sitemap from the public pages on your Tiki.
Okay, thank you. Snapshot. This is a series of analytics execution action that enables scrapping a web page.
Okay.
Not as a wiki page.
So this is a tricky one. This is a bit of a work in progress. But the idea fundamentally, one use case would be, I go to a web page. So I create a web page, an external web page. I say, go to this other URL, capture all the HTML, bring it back, and put it in the wiki page. Do that again tomorrow if it changes. So basically, it will be a way to be able to monitor changes of external content in wiki pages. And one of the reasons for the use cases we have, which is the real use case for which this started, which is a bit weird, is we have tracker forms. We have advanced trackers. And what happens is, if let's say on Monday you have a tracker form which has 30 fields, and then somebody adds a field in the tracker, you now maybe have 31 fields on your page, but you didn't change the wiki page. The wiki page wasn't edited. It's the content of the plugin. It's one of the plugins that brings in one more field. So what happens is sometimes wiki pages can change their behavior, but the end user has no way of understanding what changed. So in a context, like in a legal context, and in like if you're doing ISO certifications or something like that, every time it changes, you need to keep a trace. So what this does is lets us keep track of changes in our processes. And then, there's a wiki page changed in which you can diff, you can have, you can get an email when it changes. So that's what we're trying to do. So it's still experimental. I think there's still going to be some trial and error before we get it right. But it's basically, give me a snapshot of something. And since it's in a wiki page, we get all these benefits.
We actually worked out a different way of doing that, me and Jean-Marc. using the wiki page tracker field. So you get the history of the changes, and it saves the HTML of a tracker item. Because you often have that for legal terms, especially if you've got linked trackers. So in 1 year, the contact is a certain person, but then they leave. You need to have a record of the contract a year ago with the person who was there a year ago, rather than what the live data would be. So, there's various ways, and I haven't had a chance yet to look at what this snapshot thing does, but sounds like we were addressing the same problem.
Yes, it sounds that way, but in any case, we made it generic, right? When we discussed this, we didn't want to do something too specific, so that's why we took a step back and we just said it's a snapshot of HTML. So it has uses way beyond the immediate use case.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so just before I move on to the next one, so Gore had some questions. So here I'd like to see better integration between Tiki pages and file galleries to connect them more naturally. Yeah, so that feature of direct file mapping mode definitely is on the wish list. It's actually on the to-do. It just never made it to the top. But yeah. And as well, related to that, Fabio often talks about making it easier for Tikis to store files not on the Tiki but elsewhere. So if you have a Tiki with 15 gigs of videos or something, those videos don't necessarily need to be stored in Tiki. The Tiki needs to manage them for permissions and all that, but they could be stored in an external place. So yeah, I expect that file gallery improvements are going to happen in each of the upcoming versions. There'll be some enhancements.
Great. I see there is more questions. Sorry. I see the point about the web monetization, but the ongoing of this hour is about Ground for the Web. So maybe we just skip to the last improvement, that is the plugin signature, and then we go on the web monetization. For the web signature.
So that's great. So I can talk about that one as well. That's a little plugin basically to be able to draw a signature on the page. So it was actually very simple. It was an external thing that we integrated, but it's pretty cool because it lets people draw on a page. I don't remember if we put it in trackers yet. So that would probably be the next step, where you would create a form in trackers, and then one of the fields would be signature. Thank you for drawing. Yeah. So it's it's a nice little cool feature. Well, that's a nice signature.
Yeah,
okay.
I want to test that with a mobile, but yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
I think I did test it. I seem to remember that it worked surprisingly well, or maybe it was something else. What about mobile stuff? Just on a little thing on that. So one of our developers, Andon, is helping a lot on the front end stuff. If ever there's some things in Tiki that work generally well, but they're not working like with touch, let me know, because sometimes it could be a quick fix. And definitely, everything on the long term, everything we're doing should work on touch.
Oh, great! Yeah, trying to move everything on tablet so I can test. That's good.
All right. So if there's not any other questions on the features, then I can use the rest of the time to talk to you about the web monetization project.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So it's okay that we don't have that much time, because this is not it's not at this TikiFest that we're really going to talk about it a lot. There's the link there with the report. So maybe if someone could put it in the chat as well, so everybody can go and read it. But at a high level, what we're doing here, there's a project called Grant for the Web, and Grant for the Web has basically a very sizable amount of money that they're funding projects they're sponsoring projects to adopt the latest web monetization tools and strategies, and we've participated in that. We've got a grant, and we're we're halfway through the project, and we've integrated things, and we're going to continue working. And at one of the next TikiFests, or maybe monthly roundtables, we're going to do something much longer. But at the high level, the dream here is to do is to be able to have end users paying directly content creators for content, and not relying on advertising, or maybe not only relying on advertising. And what that looks like, to make it very simple, there's a Chrome or Firefox plugin that you can install. And then what that does is you pay a subscription. So for example, I pay a subscription monthly to a service called Coil, but this is all open standards. So it's one company that I'm paying now, but I could pay another company, right? It's not locked. There's no lock-in like that. But I'm paying some money to Coil every month, and then they have a wallet basically with my money. And then I visit whatever sites that I visit. If I hit a site that's also using Coil and it has the web monetization activated, for all the time that I invest or I spend on this site, they're going to get some money. So basically, it's splitting the money that I'm giving among all the participants. So imagine what that could do for us. For example, the documentation website. So we're obviously gonna dog food this. So we're gonna set this up on documentation site. So if people spend some time on our documentation site, there could be some money coming in. And so basically, the premise is that people are ready to pay a reasonable amount for content, but they don't want like the nasty tracking. They want it to be reasonable, and they want the money as much as possible to go to the content creators. So this is a way of doing this, with web standards, etc. And there are some challenges with this. For example, what do you do if you have a website which is collaborative and several people worked on it, which is the case of Tiki? Well, we added some features in Tiki where you can say specifically, this content is, the money for this content goes to this person versus the money of this content goes to this other person. And those things will refine as we use it more and more. And that's one part of the project. Another part of the project is to add a payment gateway, and that part's we're still working on. But at a high level, what this does, and I know this makes Bernard happy, is that it makes us. It's been a long time that Tiki has some payment systems. I think it was since Tiki 5. But realistically, all the payment parts in Tiki is not very mature. It works for the basic use cases, but it's not very mature. And then this project is pulling us back into saying, how can we work on monetization? How can content be available? So the hope is that content creators could say, hey, Tiki is a fantastic platform for me to put my content. And then I could decide, for these users, I'll use advertising, but if they're using Coil, I'm going to do it this way. And then maybe this other content, they have to pay extra. It's per month or per book or per video or whatever it is. So we did the first project. We're halfway through the grant, and the plan is that we're starting to think about a second grant. So what happens is this association grant for the web, they want to continue working with projects that have started. So once we succeed the first part, if you come up with a second proposal, that would work. And the second proposal could be, of course, enhancing the technology part, but it could also be partly technology and partly content. And basically, they're very open to projects. So if you have any ideas of how the web can change, how we can improve through different business models, basically not just relying on advertising, but having other business models for paying, they're very open to that. So that's it. And then if I go here to this is our demo site. So we have a test site. If you'd like the password to that to go and poke around, just contact me and chat here or email, whatever, and I'll share the password with you so you can go and check it out. I know we went a bit over the time, but are there any questions? All right. So Bilal had helped us with preparing this proposal. So he's not here today, but thank you, Bilal, for preparing that proposal. It was quite tricky because, you know, there's a lot of like these things, like these grants and these things, and it's often, you know, you invest a lot of time to prepare a grant, and you don't get it, right? So it's a bit frustrating. So. But you know, so Bilal had worked hard on this one, and we actually got it. So this is pushing us in the direction of more e-commerce. And if I related to that, we also have a medium-sized project that we're working with Bernard for an e-commerce site for selling books, basically. So one more project which is going to make us, you know, better as an e-commerce platform. So I would say that by the end of 2021, our e-commerce features will be one level higher than today, and I think that it's, you know, and then we'll be actively looking for projects. So what we've seen in the market is that there's a lot of demand for e-commerce projects, but you know, you have to be ready. And now, you know, we were missing some features, but by the end of the year, our feature set will be good enough that we'll be actively responding to opportunities for e-commerce using Tiki.
With Johnny's help.
Sorry, what did you say, Bernard?
With
Tiki-
Johnny's help.
Yeah, yes, of course. Well, Johnny is all over the place. He's instrumental. So no,
that's Tiki
go ahead.
20.
Yes, yeah, Tiki 24. Well, yeah, Tiki 24, yeah. But maybe some things will be back portable. We'll see how what it looks like. I get the impression that, you know, it's mostly about finishing things, but you never know. We'll see when we do it.